Welcome back to Stage Dive. Here we are at season 3. It's been a magical slate of interviews for this season. We have an intimacy coordinator. We have a singer who's blowing up on TikTok. We have dancers. We have photographers. We have stand-up comedians. So many different kinds of performances. So many different kinds of humans. I loved making this season, and I hope you enjoy it.
Today we have a new, spanking new episode with Jon Gifted. He is a dancer, videographer, filmmaker out of Los Angeles, California. And I love many things about Jon, this beautiful human, but the two things that stand out are, one, he has a specific perspective. He has a reason that he does everything that he does, and I am both a huge fan of specificity and an appreciator of it in a world where it feels like everything can start to look the same. And the second thing is, Jon is someone who's done a lot of inner work and has an inner curiosity that is completely insatiable, and one that he continues to follow in all of his art. And I respect it, I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful that he shared it with me. This conversation, it's a different texture because he's a different kind of human, and so I really, really hope you enjoy it. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. How was your holiday?
It was pretty good. Me and my brother got the fire department called on us because we had too much smoke in our apartment from grilling, so.
Oops.
Yeah.
Can't win them all. Oh my goodness. Inevitably, we do a little bit of research on guests. I try not to do so much that I'm stalking you and looking into your life, but enough to have a general sense of what you're working on and what's going. And the first thing that's immediately apparent to me is that you at least present a really defined aesthetic. The lighting you use, the tones you use, the way that you're using a camera is very, very specific. I'm a huge fan of specificity. I love it when people have a very particular way they like to do things or present. So can you just, in your own words, sort of describe your aesthetic? And then can you talk about kind of how you arrived at it over time?
Okay, so I love film. I film as well, and it's definitely been a passion. I want to say since even before I started dancing, and when it came to even me being introduced more into the scene, because I've been dancing since a very young age, but once I got into the dance scene, I started to have subjects to practice my captures, and then eventually I started to understand what it is to emulate a feeling through an artificial lens. And then eventually it became, okay, how do I manipulate light in order to capture a mood? And then eventually it just kind of snowballed in knowledge, and then eventually to even where I'm at now, all the things that I put out are solely based on an initial feeling. And it's more so like me connecting with my inner child to understand what it is to have that excitement and put that excitement into capturing something that feels happy, that feels maybe even more, I want to say contentful, or even, sad, angry, all the emotions. I've been one to really dive into how we can master the depiction of emotions through lighting, but also through, cinematic capture. And I just always love to provide a cinematic perspective to dance, because that's even what drew me to the art form, is when I started seeing cinematographers who were really big fans of dance introduce that and kind of bring those two together to really showcase both at their highest level. So, yeah.
I'm so many questions bubbling up. Do you was there a particular dance or cinematographer, or was there a moment or a person who for you sort of flipped that switch of oh my God, I didn't even realize that this whole world of either artistic expression or artistic capture existed until I saw this thing?
I mean, I think it just kind of built over time. Nowadays, I really love artists who bring forth the raw essence of human nature and even the real realities of this world and what we live in, and the truths that are evident, but sometimes we consciously or unconsciously don't, see them. But I can say, so the few, I'll just start here. My go-to directors right now that I love to watch and the films that I love, of course, you have Steven Spielberg, you have Barry Jenkins, you have, why is his name not coming to me right now? He's the one that did Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim, um, Last Night in Soho. Oh my gosh, dude. He's just a very like I want to say he's a comedic director, but
Okay.
Taika Waititi is definitely somebody that I'm very new to and I'm really fond of. But the list can go on and on, but I think it just more so became when I realized art is not defined by one thing.
Mm,
It's just an infinite amount of expressions and life experiences that we're able to kind of bring forth and somehow make beautiful, but still maintain that rawness, that real essence that, you know, is is this life, you know?
mm,
And that's what really drew me into dance. That's what really drew me into film. And I mean, I'm not like the craziest painter, but I love painting and I even love, you know, doing sculpting and ceramics when I get to, but I just love art in its totality because it allows us to truly feel the things that we need to feel that we don't get to on a day to day. And for me growing up, that was definitely a very difficult thing to manage because of my environment, because of my family dynamic. So
mm.
I can't really pinpoint a lot of like my inspirations, but I can just say that it's always been around me. And I know like there's elders in my family who are very artistic, but just never pursued it to the
Mm.
degree that I have now. And they just thought that they had to do the 9 to 5 thing in order to stay alive. And granted, that's not like a horrible path to take. It's just not my path. And
Yeah.
I was very adamant on becoming an artist in some way, shape, or form because art was what ignited me since I was born. So yeah, that's a really tough question.
I mean, it's not knowing you for 11 minutes apparently. Um, the way you speak and the language you use like reveals what certainly sounds like a good amount of inner work and inner curiosity. Um, like you don't just pick that shit up off the street. Like that comes from looking in the mirror an awful lot. And so like, um, again, I guess similar question, like, did you always have that sort of inner curiosity? Were you always just sort of asking the question why when it came to your feelings, your emotions, the world around you?
Oh, absolutely. I remember being 3 years old and asking my mom, like, what is time? Like, how is
Mm.
today? And the way I asked it to her too, I remember she was like, John,
Not
yeah,
now.
you're being silly. And I was like, okay, but I was like, so if today is today, is today not tomorrow? Because the only thing that makes it different is the sun goes down and then comes back up. So is it not the same day, but merely a shift in rise and fall of the sun? Granted, it wasn't, I didn't say it in that
Yeah.
well-spoken way, but I said it to where she could understand it, and she was just not about it. She was like, "Nah, I don't know, you're crazy." I was like, well, this is real. Like, I'm really confused. I'm like, I'm trying to understand, like, what it is to live in this world. And while we have different days, when the days are truly the same, but the only thing that separates it is when we go to sleep and when the sun rises and falls, you know? Like, time didn't make sense to me then. And then, of course, I got conditioned to it, and I was like, okay, now I gotta be here at this time. I gotta interview at 12 Central, and I gotta make sure I'm not late, you know? Like, now we're in this rhythm that we've been conditioned with, and I've always tried to just understand how I could separate myself from what what I need to play in terms of the game and what I need to do in
Mm-hmm.
terms of myself and how I can navigate and operate at my best self. And I've always just tried to understand the things around me so I could just better equip myself for what is ahead. And a lot of it wasn't even so much in the realm of inner work. It was just like curiosity and like observation, like hanging out with my friends, hanging out with my family, and learning about their experiences helped me understand what my experiences mean. Because even one time I had a
Mm-hmm.
scratch on my arm, I was like, I don't even know what this is. Am I gonna die? Like, what is this? Like when I was a kid, and then I asked them like, you're okay. And then, when I got my first sickness, I was like, oh, am I gonna die? And they're like, no, you're just. It's like I didn't understand these things. Like I was very, very like ground fundamentally like naive to a lot of the things in this world, and I truly was just trying to understand what every single thing meant because there's what my inner being knew didn't understand what this world knew, like, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very interesting. But now, of course, coming to where I am today, I was like, yeah, everything is everything is connected, everything is similar. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just the fact that man has always tried to flip the script for their own personal gain for whatever, agenda they had. And once I came to understand that part, it was like it allowed me to be a little bit more aware rather than being closed off and allowing myself to be more open to the experiences that could even just teach me more about myself just because I believe that we are all interconnected. We are all a part of the same organism. We're just cells working on different, you know, sectors of said organism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I agree with you. And I think each individual is living the dual experience of like, what is my internal wisdom? What is my intuition? What is my gut communicating about myself and the world around me? And then what are the structures I navigate so that I can be a dancer, so that I can share film? It's like, it's, it's this funny, what was coming up for me is like they need each other. I don't know if they need each other. They can be supportive of one another. Like some of that playground, that structure does allow us to communicate. Like this fucking conversation can't happen if some of the jungle gym doesn't exist
Right,
and we don't build some of these tools and resources,
right.
right? And now I get to connect you. I don't even know where you are. That's where I literally don't know where you are, but we get to have a beautiful conversation about oneness and how we are intrinsically connected as two beings on this earth, which I think is fucking
Yeah,
beautiful. And so like I'm with you. There are absolutely days when I'm like, man, I fucking hate the Matrix and I hate that we live in it and that like we have to do all this bullshit
yes,
to participate in these systems. And like the clothes I'm wearing, the desk I have, like all of it is a product of these playgrounds and systems and structures that we have built, which can also, as you pointed out, be manipulated to work against the interests of many people. And that's like it's a weird thing to exist in every day as we think about
yeah,
it. But that the curiosity piece resonates and like the just like and it's funny, it's like I just want to understand. I remember having so many conversations with my parents that like I don't know if fight is the right word, but they would say, it's like, well, like that's just how the world works. Why?
yeah,
Like it doesn't. I don't. You fucking hate it. You say it's stupid, but we're all doing it, and it's like hurting a lot of people. So why? And like, but I still don't have answers to the majority of those questions, which is why, again, on some days I feel like, oh, life is glorious and amazing and expansive, and some days I'm like, what the fuck is this
yeah,
place? Like, I don't know what it is we are doing here, and like, I hope I don't fuck up too bad. That's the baseline I try to operate
yeah.
off of. Like, was I kind? Was I generous? Was I human? And if I did that, it's like, let's hope for the
Right.
best.
Um, but something I have extreme curiosity about, and admittedly some jealousy. Like uh, before we sort of started the formal conversation, you were just talking about like movement as this intrinsic right, as this intrinsic gift, as this thing we are born with, this need, this desire to move and express. And like I love to dance. I'm very embarrassed of the way that I dance because I don't think it's good.
Mm,
But like but I see people like you, like Alex, who have found so much freedom and connectivity in it. And so tell me when dancing really became like a big part of your life.
ooh, okay. So I used to skateboard as an adolescent. That was my first dream. I wanted to be a pro skater. Paul Rodriguez was my
Mm.
mentor, but not like directly, but like indirectly. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be the next Mexican skateboarder to be out here doing the thing. And then eventually I broke my board and I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna dance because also within that time span, I danced for the fun, for the love, for the enjoyment, and I didn't think that I could make
Mm.
a profession out of it, let alone just pursue it in that light. And now it was just like, okay, if I'm gonna do it, I gotta go all in. And that's when I remember I broke my board. I graduated high school, 18 years old, going on 19, and I was introduced to a dance crew in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I'm from Dallas, and I'm actually currently in Dallas visiting family right now. And
Oh, nice.
um, my friend was like, "Hey, come try out for this team. You can go show them your finger touch stuff, and we can see if we can work you into the squad." And I was like, "Okay, okay." So I went, and I remember when I really loved Long John Silver's, I went and grabbed Long John Silver's as my comfort food, and I was just sitting there watching the audition. And I was like, "Okay, okay." And they were like, "Are you gonna go?" I was like, "Nah," because everybody that was auditioning was super dope. I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want to do this
Mm.
anymore." And then eventually they were like, "We're gonna do a probationary period where you're gonna come and learn some stuff, and then we're gonna see how you do." And I was like, "All right." I go, I learned this Michael Jackson tribute piece that they ended up competing, and I did good. And then from then on is when I truly like started my journey. I was with them for a few years, and then when I turned 20, I was like, all right, I want to go and dive into the freestyle scene, the street dance scene. So I'm gonna go full force in that, and that's when I met a lot of beautiful individuals. And then eventually, when I turned 23, 24, I moved to LA, and that's where I like really like expanded my dance because that's where like the melting pot of people. And that's like it's funny because I think I got to the part in Alex's podcast where she said she won her first event in LA, and I believe I was
Yeah.
there at that event. Yeah,
Oh
because that's where I
shit.
first saw
Okay.
her. I first saw her and Callie at this event called Dance Fight that a homie of mine threw, and they were like just crushing. They were like just dogging people left and right, and it was crazy because also like they, I don't know, the whole like gender thing when it comes to dance didn't make sense to me, but even now like I'm just like whatever. But the fact that they were just two females like going up against like these brawlic dudes, especially when it came to crumpers, and they were just like killing them with some smooth, ooh, they were just going crazy. I was like, man,
Mm.
this is what I want to be around. And then, I still didn't know Alex at that time too. Like I didn't really like get connected with her until I think 2020. And um, but like to kind of bring it back, because people like her would come into LA and I would just sit here and observe and allow my curiosity and my childlike wonder to just experience it all. I was like, dang man, I need to really push and level up because there are people out in this world that are just diving so deep into themselves to find this and to present it. And that's
Mm.
when it even made me like work on myself more. And before I even dove into like inner work and shadow work and just the knowings of myself, I was doing that already with my dance. And when I started to find dance as that specific outlet, that's when I really started to fall in love with it because then it helped me really see myself for the beauty that I am and the person that I am, and all that I have to offer to the people around me, not even just this world, but just the immediate circle that I have, because there's perspectives that I see that they don't. And then there's perspectives that I don't see that they do. And so then it became this very holistic form of communication through movement that started to help all of us kind of heal through our experiences. And I remember moving to LA with my brother Freedom, and he is a Krumper at heart, but now his movement has expanded to something so profound and wonderful that it's like I can't even explain it. He would have to. But him and I have both like experienced similar upbringings, and the way that we managed to grow through that is allowing our dance to just release and nurture it at the same time. And every time I got to that place, I was like, I need more of this. I need more of the unapologetic expression and just feeling. Because like I said earlier, like growing up, like feeling my feelings was not something that I learned about, was not something that I was also hip to, because my mom didn't necessarily show her feelings with me and my brother. And unless I was with my grandmother and my aunt, like I was just like, I don't, how do I navigate this emotion if I'm told not to feel it because I'm doing too much or da 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 da. And then like meeting dance, like dance just allowed me to knock all that out the window and just be like, hey, you bring all of yourself here so you can leave with another version of yourself that you haven't met yet. And yeah, I think it's just, I just got addicted to the deeper aspects of finding love in myself through this dance, and learning how to continue to nurture that through practice and practicing how to nurture. Like it all comes like full circle when I start to think about it. It's like you can't elevate yourself unless you know you sit with yourself and you learn how to have grace with yourself, and you learn how to have compassion, and you learn how to give yourself the time and space to do and feel and cry and laugh and be angry, so that way okay, I'm still safe in this place when I go out into that place.
Man, there's a lot of
I
profanity in there.
sometimes I just go off. I'm
Um,
sorry.
no, God, please don't apologize. Um, One of the questions that occurs to me, and this has come up a lot this season, is like um, art, particularly an expressed art, so like singing, rapping, dancing, where there's sort of your movement, you're in it, it's live. Like there is something about the context and the setting that you have to put yourself in as an artist to feel the freedom and the safety to be able to express like that. And so like, what do you do to kind of to get your mind and your body ready to dance in a way where you're really connecting to inner self?
Nowadays, I definitely try to keep myself grounded with either breath work or even just a simple thought of like reminding myself why I'm even here doing this. Like what my sole purpose is in this moment when I'm moving in the space. Whether it's I'm just here to have fun or whether it's I'm here to hopefully inspire somebody to, you know, dive deeper into themselves, or I'm just here to fuck shit up, like because when I step into a battle, sometimes that's what it is. It's like, okay, now I gotta like put on this hat so I know like I'm here to really like go to war, so to speak. But um, even when it's just like a session, right? Like something that's very communal, very open, very free. I have to remind myself that outside of all of that other stuff, like, yes, this is going to be for me. This is going to be for my fulfillment, my joy, and ultimately to refill my cup. So the external factors are no longer needed to kind of help me, I guess, move forward in what I'm about to do because it's not for them, it's for me. And because I love this dance so much and I love movement so much and I love the way that the movement has healed my body and not only my spirit and my mind, but it's just been a really huge tool in my life. So now I start to treat it with the utmost respect and the utmost care because now I feel like the conversation between it and myself is very it's just very important. It's very homey. So it's like when I'm home, I'm home. So nothing outside of my home is allowed to come in because me and my home are having moments and I want to cherish those moments. So in order for me to cherish those moments, I have to really tune in and tune out so that way I can be fully present. And sometimes I don't, and sometimes I can't be fully present because those those noises outside are pretty loud, and if they are, then that means I need to address them in some way. And so that's what is needed. And even in the circle, like if that happens, I'm like, you know what? Let's shake it off. Let's take a breath while we're still moving and see if we can dive back in again. And I'll have that reset. And then until it happens, I'll just keep trying again because that's all you can do is you just keep trying. You just dust yourself off and try again. Like Aaliyah said, you want to just keep going, and that's something that was also um, given to me as I was growing up. It was like no matter what happens, no matter what obstacles are in your way, you just always want to keep going because if you love something, you can't just like give up. You have to keep going in order to get through whatever it is, whether it be you, yourself, or them. Just keep going because what is there is only temporary, but what is infinite is that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I have a selfish curiosity, which is like, so I mentioned to you when I started this podcast, like I was just starting to perform. So I think my first shows were like middle 2022, something like that, like just starting to get into open mics and blah, 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 blah. And like one of the things I notice is that there is a very fine line between someone who is so connected to self that the whole audience is drawn toward them and someone who is so self-absorbed that like they're completely unaware that they're in a room of people and it feels like there's this weird gap between. And so one of the things I feel like I try to navigate when I'm on stage is like I never want the audience to feel like I'm not with them,
Mm,
that I'm not seeing them, that I'm not hearing them, that I'm not connected to them in some way.
And so sometimes that's about going inward, so you know that your expression is hitting them in the fucking
Yeah.
chest and they're really
Yeah.
feeling you. And sometimes it's about reaching out and being like, no, like I'm still with you. I want you here. Like you are a part of this performance as much as I am on stage. And like I think it's again, it's a very fine line of reaching and wanting the audience to be with you and letting those external energies and feelings and need for validation start to cloud or get in the way of your expression. So like I'm curious if you can think about a time when either like you've really felt that struggle of like, ooh, I so want to be with the audience, but also I can't disconnect from myself, or just even how you try to navigate the balance between those two things.
Oh, so that's definitely happened to me before, but I can't really pinpoint the time, but I can remember the
Yeah.
feeling. And
Mm.
I know like I said earlier, like when I was in the circle and I felt that disconnect because you can feel it. You can feel when like people just kind of like start to wash over and like are like, okay, what's going
Mm.
on? Now I'm not connected to this person that's on stage or that's in the circle or that's on this platform because they're probably not even in tune with themselves. And that's when it becomes like, oh, they're just doing movements. Oh, they're just saying words. Oh, they're just talking to talk. And I think what kind of helped me through that was like learning when to take that breath and to take that pause.
Mm.
And the the idea of taking a pause is is like when there's a break in a song. It's like you're really getting revved up. You're like, ooh, dang, okay, and then it drops, and you're like, because then now you're able to register what just happened, and then sometimes people like come and like they hit you again right away, like with all the sounds, or it'll crescendo real slowly, and then eventually it'll turn back into what it just was, and then you'll be like, oh, this is why I love this song because they took the time to allow you to feel that. And so I had to learn how to take the
Mm.
time to allow myself to feel even what I just did before I could worry about them feeling it. Because then if I'm not connected, they're not connected. And if my influence or my creation is influenced by them, I need to make sure that it's influenced in a way that doesn't diminish the quality of who I am and who I am presenting in that moment. And dang, I lost my train of thought. But definitely just to allow myself to just, you know, take a second, let it marinate, let it sizzle, and then get to cooking once more because now I know where I'm at in my trajectory, in my story, and I know where my pitfall is, I know where my rise is, and I know if I need to take a small break, I will, because there's nothing wrong with taking a break. There's nothing wrong with taking a sip of water so you can rehydrate and replenish to gain clarity. And even if you just stand there and look at the audience, look at your peers, and look at everybody that is existing there with you, and you realize, you know, this is fundamentally just joy being cultivated.
Mm.
When you go to see a show, when you go to listen to a song, you go to feel something. And a lot of times you like, even when it's like you're going through, like, say, you're going through a hard time and you want to go and find a song that can kind of match that feeling that you have, but in reality, you're also like looking for something to lift your spirit. And when you find that, you're like, ah, I'm still sad, but in reality, you actually just found a little bit of joy because the song resonated with you in that time. So now it's like, how can I cultivate that joy more and more? And that's part of another practice as well. I'm just going down rabbit holes in my brain right now. Maybe I need to take a pause. Like
No.
it's But I think that's the beauty of the pause, is to see what they're doing and what you're doing is it's all working together to build something beautiful, which is the joy of existence. And I've had like a handful of people that were close to me in my life that have passed, and it sucks because it was always those moments that really like made me dive even deeper to understand that our time is short here on this earth, and so that everything that we do, we could be doing it in love versus in the lack thereof. Like we could be moving in joy at every single moment that we can, rather than moving in pain or moving in stubbornness or arrogance or you know any other emotion you wish to apply there. But I'm now like in a place where I just want to move in nothing but love and joy and understanding, because I still have curiosities. I still have curiosities about my brother. I still have curiosities about my mother. I still have curiosities about my friends. And anytime that I get, I I ask. I'm like, yo, what does this mean to you? Or why do you feel this way about this? Because maybe there's something that I truly just don't understand that they were affected by, that formed that perspective, and I'm just all about understanding. But the deeper the understanding, the deeper amount of space you can open up to create more love. And
Yeah.
that's where I also feel the importance of a pause can come into play, because then you can start to find those little pockets that you haven't explored yet. And sometimes you can do it right there on that stage. And that's also the beauty of art, is you can do it spontaneously at any moment, in the moment, and create something fresh, and it still be beautiful,
Mm.
as long as you allow yourself to
Yeah.
take that moment.
Have you ever been curious about what it would feel like to get on stage for the first time? Or have you been curious about what it feels like to start a podcast? Or just to go through life as an artist? If any of those questions are of interest to you, I want to let you know I do a newsletter that comes out mostly regularly, every couple of weeks, and it's called the Jack Dawkins newsletter. Super orig, I know. But I just kind of document in detail what I'm going through as a performer, as an artist, as I sort of learn and navigate all the different things that I'm doing. And it's my intention not to pitch you on anything, to sell you anything, but just to share my story as it unfurls. And selfishly, is a way for me to catalog all these different moments and experiences, so that if one day I choose to go back and I want to remember what something felt like, I have this lovely catalog of things that I can look to. So if that's of interest to you, you can sign up in the comments below, or in the video description, whichever. And I encourage you to do so. I'd love to see you there. Thank you.
It's interesting, like through your whole answer, the analogy that was coming up for me, which like may seem a little tangential, but it makes sense. It's like the way you make really beautiful food is you taste as you go, right? Like it's you have all your ingredients, but like the process of cooking is layers and
Yes,
stages.
yes.
And you add the onions, you add a little salt, you taste that, then you add some herbs, you add the spice, you add the next vegetable, you taste like, and it's taking that moment. And again, like it's not a fucking 20-minute meditation. It's not like, oh, let me be with this onion. No, it's like taste it. It's like, what does it need? Like, oh, I want more acid, or I want spice, or like I want something unfamiliar. Like it's just the taking a pause to be aware of what, as you framed earlier, like either your inner child, your inner self is wanting or asking for from this moment, from this ingredient, from this dance, from this community, from this audience. And it's what I always find so wild is like sometimes it can really seem like mysticism, this idea that we can connect to an inner wisdom.
Hmm.
Inner wisdom is pretty fucking loud.
Yeah.
If you actually just stop and just really ask and just listen, you usually get an answer. And again, like the form will change, but I think it's more available than we realize. Which, like, anyway, all this to say, the analogy you're making makes perfect sense. And in my life, like in cooking, just taking that 2 seconds to just taste as you go, and to just be curious about like, what does this need? What is it wanting? What am I wanting from it?
is the difference between good food and great food.
Absolutely. And now I'm actually in the point in my life where I'm wanting to learn how to cook, period, like more and better. And
Mm-hmm.
like even just the other day when I was like making this chili for me and my brother so we could enjoy like these hot dogs with some really nice ass chili, um, I was like, oh dang, I feel like I didn't put enough salt. Let me go ahead and do a little more salt. So then it's like, okay, let me just let it marinate in my mouth so I can understand where the taste buds hit. Because like I've been watching also a lot of uh, cooking shows just to gain inspiration and to gain traction. And I'm a very big fan of movies that are centered around cooking. And I've been
Yeah.
watching also a series called The Bear, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's like I feel like it's one of the closest depictions I've seen to what it's like to work in a kitchen. Because granted, I've never
Yes.
worked in a kitchen, but I've worked in a space with people who have definitely worked in kitchens, and they brought that experience to where I was, and I was like, "Yo, this is nuts." But it's it's real, and it gets hot. Like, and if you can't take the heat, yeah, get out because this is a part of what it is to create something beautiful. Sometimes it gets a little hot, sometimes it gets a little steamy, sometimes you might get burned, but after all of that, there's that beautiful dish that you get to present, that somebody gets to ingest, and they get to ingest all the love you put into it. Because, granted, you put so much, like, there was a lot of frustration happening around you, but only because you wanted to make sure that what you're presenting is top tier, it's fully robust in its flavor and its nutrients and in its existence for you to just be like, I'm gonna come here again because it tastes so good. That's what dance is, like you go through all this shit so you can come back and present the beauty that you learned through all these experiences that you had. And that's why I also feel it's
Yeah.
so beautiful. And I also think that's why I've been attracted to cooking because of that similar sentiment.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and like the piece that like I always wonder. So I worked in restaurants for 10
Wow.
years. So like, and I grew up at my mom's apron strings.
Sick.
Like I was at the stove for a long time. And I think the piece that's hard to communicate through the show is like, yes, pressure, like, yes, chaos. And your point is exactly right, which is like, even when chaos moves around, you can't imagine how delicate people are being with the food. And it seems counterintuitive, but like, I have watched people like actively losing their shit take like a perfect, delicate piece of fish and put it just so on a plate.
Mm.
Like both things can be happening. But the really interesting piece, and I imagine this is true in dance as well, is like the bonds you form with people who you have shared that environment with and been in that level of intensity. Ooh, they're deep. There's like I remember I've been really lucky. I was on the opening team of a restaurant. So you're basically taking this empty shell and putting life into it. You are making this community, this building, this whole thing come to life. And the chef at the time was like, "You will never forget the opening team." And sure as shit, I can tell you where I would stand in the kitchen and I could go position by position. I could tell you what they cooked. I could tell you how they cooked. I could tell you what their ticks were. Like I remember everything about every single person because that intensity, it's shared experience. It brings you closer.
Yeah.
It brings you so close.
Yeah. And like y'all were in the same boiling pot, so like you can't forget who you were burning with, like that's a that's a
Mm,
that's a whole different thing. That's like I feel like what sorority fraternities are kind of built off of. That's what families are built off of. Like y'all are in this home together. Y'all experience so
yes.
much together, so you're not gonna forget your family. And when you always come home, home is where that love was truly at because that's where you also learned how to become a better version of yourself at some point in time. And that's why like it's so wild to me because there's like there's a handful of people who are afraid of these experiences, afraid of getting burned, afraid of
Mm,
getting getting a little cooked under the pressure because they're like, it's just too much for me. I can't feel it. And like, granted, I understand that side. I understand being traumatized, but also there's certain things that you just need reality to smack you with in order to get out of that,
Mm,
to get out of that funk of the word repression comes to mind just because you're not allowing yourself to see it through and understand that you got to go through all that shit in order for you to truly be happy and to find happiness, because that's going to be your gauge. You're going to know like where you were, but where you want to be. And if you didn't get through all this, you're not going to know where this is. So it's like,
mm,
yeah, like for me, that's how I grew up, is like, you know, put a little dirt in your wound and you'll be all right, like it'll make you stronger, or like, just wipe the tears off and just keep going, like you said earlier, dust your shoulder off, like just keep going is like, I think, the overall theme that we're going for here. But yeah, I think that's why I've also been drawn to the dynamics of a kitchen, but also just the dynamics of what it is to cook, and
mm.
how what you put into your overall process creates the product.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%. Um, can't believe I'm asking this question 45 minutes into the interview, but like, how do you describe your your style of dance? Like,
Hmm.
if you were to, and like to someone who doesn't know a ton about dance, this person.
I mean, to this day, to this moment, because I don't know, like that's something that I've also been very it's been not difficult for me to explain, but because I'm just so like free with my movement, but people just see a lot. They see me wave a lot, and of course, waving as that, right? So I can best say it's meditative, like especially with the way that I treat it now. Like no matter where I am, like even if I'm in this aggressive place of like a battle, it's still going to be meditative for me because I'm going to build that foundation. I'm going to tender that soil and like really tend to it. I'm gonna plant all my seeds, and as I'm watering them and everything grows, that's when I start to use them in so many different ways and letting them grow into what they need to be. But I would just, yeah, I would, that the word I would give is definitely meditative, but it's also freeing. And I could say that it's just it's very ancestral for me too. Like
Mm,
there's this heartbeat that I'm still learning about, that has been living inside me for a very long time, that I wasn't hip to. And I'm having family members still tell me stories to this day of what it was like for my indigenous ancestors to live and to dance and to breathe, and why they even did their dance, and how it kind of coincides with even why I do my dance. Like my dance is part of praising. My dance is part of just loving and worshiping the journey that I've been on, and being proud of who I've grown up to be. And yeah, like if I were to say a style, I would say I'm a I'm a hip hop dancer. But if you want to get really specific, I am a freestyle head. I just love being free because the genres that I tap into are not like, it's not just popping, it's not just waving, it's not just tutting, it's also crumping, it's also groovement that is hip hop. It's also understanding the different subsectors and how they kind of all coincide and live together, because there's so many different styles, but they all have a a similar um, a similar approach. Like there's a language that ties them all together. And that for me is where I resonated with the most. And that's why I'm still even learning many other styles to this day, just because I love it so much, but also they resonate with me because of that through line. that connects them all.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, long-winded but meditative.
No, 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 no. I appreciate it, and it's I well, like again, one of the advantages of the time we live in, and I mean that both in like so there's like 2023 where like we have access to so much information and so many people and so many styles, and so like your ability to absorb and experience different things grows so quickly. But then I think we as humans just have a natural desire to put things in categories. So you are a this, or I do this thing, or blah 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 blah. It's like it's the same in hip hop and rap. It's like, well, what kind of rapper are you? Who do you sound like? It's like
Right,
hopefully me.
right.
That's
Yeah,
sort of the goal when I'm writing. It's like I want to sound like myself, inadvertently, or because I grew up listening to this music for now 25 years. I am sure that there are certain inflections, word choices, cadences, patterns that I have absorbed from the people who came before me. And if you want, you can say, sure, it is of that style. It is like that artist. But ultimately, like when you're expressing, like, I'm not sitting there saying, like, oh, well, so and so writes this way. So let me write exactly that way and make it like,
absolutely.
no, no. It's like, that's one of the most fascinating things about art to me is like, I feel like creativity exists in the air around us and we become the
Hmm.
vessel, right? And it moves through us. And it is possible for multiple people to catch
Yeah,
the same wave. And like, so like we can have an idea. I could have had it. You could have had it at the same fucking time. And we didn't talk to each other. We didn't know each other, but like the idea landed in two souls at the same time. And then the expression comes out. And so like, I always think it's funny when we get so upset about looking like someone or feeling it's like man, we're all human. It's like the fucking Simpsons. It's like there's only so many episodes, right? It's like we're gonna start to look and sound alike
yeah.
at some point. Um, and I don't like. Do you ever struggle with that? Like with people wanting to be like, "What are you?" or "How do you dance?" or "What thing do you
All the
fit into?"
time. And I think it was definitely, I want to say like 5 years ago when I, so, okay, let me do this. Let me run it back even further. So when I moved to LA,
Mm,
my trajectory in dance, like, because my friend actually brought this to my attention not too long ago, and she was like, yeah, when you moved to LA, you were like a crumper, and then you were somebody who did tutting, and then you are now like this waver. And I'm like, it's so interesting because all this already lived with inside of me, and I was already doing it, but it was I guess, the profoundness of what I kept putting out there is what people caught and what they associated me with. But in reality, I was like, I've had
mm,
all this inside. I just was exploring it like one piece at a time. And you think I'm this, but I'm not just that. And so I've had
right.
even like not necessarily heated, but like passionate conversations with friends. They're like, how can you be this if you're doing this but not that? And I'm like, because this is just what I feel. Like I go with what I feel. I don't go with what
Mm,
is being told to me. Granted, I respect everybody who comes before me. I respect the elders that have presented these styles in order for me to enjoy. But now I'm in a place where I'm just diving into what I truly, truly love in this dance. And it ranges from krump, from popping, from hip hop, and tutting and waving, and these things, and these, and now there's like footwork styles even, and they all make me happy in some way, shape, or form. But it doesn't mean I'm a footwork head, or it doesn't mean I'm just a crumper. It doesn't mean I'm just gonna be waving for this. But waving now for me is just like it's my everything. But but
mm,
like even when it comes to popping, like all these things serve their own little purpose in the cultivation of who Jon Gifted is, and that's who I am. I am just the expression and the reflection of my life experiences in this dance. And even like probably like right now, you're like, how do you explain who you are to people? And it's like, well, if they want to have a long conversation or like a deep conversation, we'll do that. But if they want to just stay surface level, I'll just be like, I'm a freestyle head that loves hip hop, krump, footwork, waving, tutting. Like if they want it that way, I can give it to them that way. But if they want to get deep, then we'll go deep
mm,
because I love going deep. I love getting very introspective in retrospective for with all these things that we do in dance. But I don't resonate with the titles. And but I respect people who do, but I'm not one to just be this is who I am because I'm always changing. I'm always evolving. So I'm not just going to be that for the rest of my life. And I think that's what I found to be true is I'm never going to be complacent in my movement. I'm just going to continue to do what I love and I'll present what looks to be complacent. But on the outside, like when I'm here, like I'm at home or I'm by myself, I'm doing a whole bunch of different things that just makes my heart happy. And that's what is always important to me. And that's what I hope is important to anybody who's pursuing dance and to anybody who's just pursuing art as they do what is important to them and what their heart calls for, because we tend to get lost in the sauce when it comes to diving into something we know very little about. But knowing your heart is always important when you want to move forward in life.
Yes. Yeah. I find it super interesting. Like, I'm going to forget the line right the second, which kills me. But like you and Alex have both talked about like, you know, I move when my heart wants to move.
Mm.
Like when I feel it, when it's in my body, when I really fucking love something, that's when I chase, when I pursue. Like, is that common is a relative word, but like, do you think that phrase, that energy is representative of the dance community at large? Or did I just happen to meet two people who are kind of on a similar wavelength?
Hmm. It is definitely very, there is a community that moves that way,
Totally.
but there's also like, again, subsectors of that where people are just more driven by the competitive aspect, by the performative aspect. But deep down, it's all connected to what ignites their heart, what sets their heart on fire. And so whether they may know it or not, I believe that it's just very known to move with your heart. And, like some people are like, so like Alex and myself are very open with that. We're very aware of that. And some people are just like, nah, man, because this shit's tight and I'm trying to be tight and I want to let people know how tight I am. But until they get past that part of them, their life in that phase, they're just gonna keep, giving that response. But once it gets to a certain level of practice for them, they're gonna be like, oh no, yeah, I do it because I love it, because I truly connect to it and it's helped me through my life, or it's just kind of been something that I love to do for fun, and we do things for fun because it's what sets our heart on fire. Like I think it always boils down to the heart, because that's our life force. Our breath and our heart is our life force. Our breath is what gives our heart that life force, but like that's what keeps us alive. So I believe, whether they know it or not, yes, it is definitely like it is very it is very much everybody, but they're just a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah, it depends on what season they're in,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Um, Last question for you. If you had to define or describe it, what do you think your inner child is asking for now?
Ooh. What do I think my inner child is asking for now? I feel like my inner child is asking for his story to be told. Um, and not just through dance, but through all the mediums, through film, through speaking, like through this I feel like the story is wanting to be told for the simple fact that there are young, whether it be Latino males or just males, that are living the life that I lived and don't know how to navigate it and are needing guidance. And whether I know it or not, what I have in my life path and what I've experienced can serve as somewhat of a template for them to kind of understand how to navigate things in their life. And I think even for just males in general, when it comes to feeling feelings, it's very, very tough because of the stigmas and the conditioning that we've had just over our existence. So for me, it's like 32 years of living that I've experienced all these things. And I wish I had more males in my life to tell me like it's cool to it's cool to cry, it's cool to be upset, but also you need to talk about this instead of holding it in, instead of bottling it up. Because there was a point in time in my life where like I exploded, but I didn't even really I imploded and I didn't know how to deal with it. I was like, what is this shit? And no, and like I remember like my body going like this and I didn't know how to navigate it. I was like, maybe I can breathe, but because then I was also trying to fight back the tears because I felt like me crying so much was not allowing me to like relax. But in reality, it was me resisting the flow and the overflow of emotions that needed to get out. And if we can learn how to feel that as it comes, I feel like it'll be much less intense when something so intense like hits us that it puts us in that position that I was once in. So I definitely believe that my inner child wants to start wants to start sharing a little bit more because I've definitely been so deep into even my own inner work that I haven't been sharing that progress. So I think that's where it's about to shift.
Oh, amazing. Well, wonderful timing for this conversation. Jon, this was really beautiful. Where can people find you and all the cool shit you do?
People can absolutely find me on Instagram at Jon Gifted, JonGifted. And those stories that you can also start to follow are at my other page, which is my film page, which is Gifted, but it's GFTDDD. And eventually my website and all that will be up. But you know, it's all a work in progress.
Work in process, baby. All work in
Yeah,
process.
you already know.
Oh man, Jon, this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, to share your story, to share your wisdom. It was a beautiful conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
Yo, thank you for having me. It was an honor and a privilege. And yeah, I hope this reaches anybody it needs to reach. And I hope this expands to everything that you wish it to expand to.
Thank you, man.
Do you know anyone who you think would make a great guest on this podcast? The good news is there's almost no qualification. They need to be a human and they need to make art. I'm not particularly concerned if they make art for 100,000 people or for no people and they're still doing it in their home. This podcast is all about telling the stories of artists and how their craft has evolved over time, how they perform in their own unique way. So if you have a friend that you love listening to, if you have someone who you think has a really interesting story, I would so love to talk to them. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for watching Stage Dive again. My name is Jack Dawkins. It was a pleasure to have you here. Before I sign off, I do want to thank Kalisa Mickle and Holly Johnson for being the hearts, the guts, the brains behind the operations that make this entire podcast possible. They work so hard to continue to improve it and put it in front of more people and allow it to continue to live on. So thank you to them, thank you to our guest, and thank you to you for watching. I appreciate you.